fans, welcome back to Room 237. I'm back with another review. So my last video was for the 2004 kind of slasher throwback, Renaissance slasher type film, Malevolence. And I do plan on picking up a Malevolence 3 Killer, but until I get that, I'll just do this. This is the 2010 prequel follow-up, Bereavement, which, if I do upgrade to the nice looking Blu-ray of Malevolence, I'll probably do it with this as well, because then it's the same Blu-ray that the third movie's in. That way they'll all kind of look like the same set, even though there's nothing really wrong with this DVD. Now, like his predecessor and like the third film, this was written, directed, produced, edited, and scored by Stephen Mina. And it stars... actually stars quite a few recognizable people. The budget is definitely there and noticeable compared to the first film. The first film was on a budget that started at $70,000 and ended up at $200,000. Here, the budget was, once I pull it up, it does not say, but it definitely looks and feels more like a studio film. In fact, it reminded me a lot of kind of a generic studio kind of slasher, like, say, Texas Chainsaw The Beginning, or even Texas Chainsaw 3D, which Daddario was also in. But this is a much, much, much better movie than those two. But it also stars John Savage, who was also in The Deer Hunter. Spencer List plays young Martin at 11 years old. Peyton List and Brett Rickaby, who a lot of people might recognize as the Patient Zero from the remake of The Crazies. He was an arsonist in season 7 of Dexter. And also, I think a lot of horror fans will recognize one of the main stars, Michael Biehn from Aliens. And they're all great. They're all fun to watch. Especially Daddario, who I'll have to say is probably the most beautiful actress in Hollywood. And she does do a better job in this than in Chainsaw 3D. Now, normally I don't care too much for origin stories. I don't think, or prequels in general, I don't think there's really much that they add. A lot of them seem pretty generic and unneeded. You know, Texas Chainsaw The Beginning was an unneeded film that did nothing for the remake. The first half of Rob Zombie's Halloween, I thought, was completely pointless and useless and didn't do anything for the character. Here, though, it could have been interesting, but I feel like not enough was really focused on the intent, because apparently Stephen Mina's original cut of this was close to, if not 3 hours long. And it's already 107 minutes, which is almost 20 minutes longer than Malevolence. And Stephen Mina himself even said the first one was like Friday the 13th and Halloween. He wanted this to be an epic horror film similar to The Shining, which I can kind of see. You know, like The Shining and Psycho. I actually saw a few nods to Psycho in this. Some of the music cues kind of sounded like The Shining, or at least it made me think of The Shining. But I feel like the character study aspect, which is what he was going for, as far as the characters of Martin Bristol becoming who he'll become in Malevolence, and being taken under the wing of Graham Sutter, played by Brett Rickaby. I feel like that was overshadowed by that Daddario story. And I will say, this is a very depressing film. It is deserving of its title. I mean, you do see Martin being abducted. I mean, a Malevolence opened up with the caption of how at the age of 6 in '89 he was abducted from his backyard. He was never seen again. Here we see the abduction. Also explains how he is able to be like this Michael Myers type killer where he can be stabbed or hit or beaten and still be able to get up and be fine, because he has some sort of congenial disorder where his brain doesn't process pain, and it shows that. We even see, because how we see Martin either in the present in Malevolence or in the flashback, he has a cut on his cheek. We see him get that cut on his first night at the slaughterhouse with Sutter, and he just sits there stone face. Or he gets like a knife driven through his hand at one point, and he's just completely blank. But, so we see like his mother react to him being abducted, him having to witness all these murders. Which, after he gets abducted, it jumps 5 years, so he's an 11-year-old throughout the film. But also, Daddario's character, Allison, she moves to this small, middle-of-nowhere town in Pennsylvania from Chicago after her parents are killed in an auto accident. She has a love interest with this guy who takes care of his father, who is a paraplegic, alcoholic. You find out his mother committed suicide. And then just what happens to, the rest of the characters, like the rest of her family by the end of the film. And, there is a lot of, grief and bereavement in this film. There is one moment that is really kind of powerful and very depressing towards the end that deals with the love interest father. But the movie mostly focuses on Allison trying to adjust to her new life with her aunt and her uncle, which her uncle is played by Michael Biehn, who absolutely hates the love interest and his family. Her trying to adjust to living with them, going to school, starting a thing with that guy, and doesn't really focus on the descent of Martin as much. In fact, when he finally becomes the killer at the end, spoilers, I mean, it has to lead into Malevolence, but it feels kind of abrupt. And because throughout the film, it does show him being scared. Even after 5 years, he does try to run away or try to flee, and he gets punished. He's basically used as, like the cleaning boy. He's the one that has to clean the, not stalls, but he has to clean up all the blood and shit after each murder. And I do want to say that Brett Rickaby is awesome at playing just deranged characters. I mean, one, he looks the part. He is kind of a creepy looking guy. He very much looks like a Gary Ridgway type serial killer. And like I said, for a Malevolence, the name Martin Bristol sounds like a great serial killer name. Graham Sutter also sounds like a perfect serial killer name. And Sutter suffers from, we get the idea through exposition that his father was abusive. We see a picture of his father who looks like Carl Panzram, who was a serial killer. He kept Graham home from school to make him work in the slaughterhouse all day, 24/7. Couldn't buy new machinery, so the slaughterhouse shut down. And he suffers from, well, he has all these bull skulls around the property. Like one in this main room that he kind of prays to or talks to or yells at. He's got one that's kind of on a scarecrow that I think was used to keep Martin inside. Because they treat the bull skull as some sort of deity that they kill for, sacrifice for, whatever. He does suffer from delusions of religious grandeur to some extent. He does spout a lot of religious or philosophical quotes when he's about to kill someone. The main one being something to do with if you feel no fear, you'll feel no pain, or something like that. Which I think is one reason why he keeps Martin around and eventually grows to fear Martin because he feels no pain. And you'll see him sort of yelling at shadows that he sees, guessing his father, and, kind of your typical deranged serial killer type of behavior, yelling at someone that's not there, it's all in their head. It is kind of a psycho-y type approach, which there's a few shots in this where Sutter will go up on the roof of the slaughterhouse and he'll be in silhouette, but he'll be looking up at the smokestack. Very much like the Psycho, silhouette of looking up at the house. Which the first time we see that is this awesome, like, red and pink cloudy sky. It's like this upward angle there in silhouette. Looks great. Also, there's a scene where Martin has a nightmare where the scarecrow with the bull skull, like, we kind of zoom in and we just see the head kind of turn. I thought that looked really cool. But apart from having an effective killer, decent kills, what also helps make this better than your typical kind of almost generic studio kind of slasher film like this, or like Chainsaw 3D, Chainsaw the Beginning, whatever, is that its set pieces really do work. And it was filmed at a real rundown slaughterhouse. I can't remember what state, but it feels filthy, grimy. You can tell it's been there forever, and you just see the blood, sweat, and tears in every inch of this place. It looks like inside the mind of madness. Like, the set pieces really do work. I thought they were great. Sometimes, like when Martin or Allison are trying to run through it, it's got this very kind of labyrinth type feel to it. And hell, there's even a scene that's kind of like Chainsaw remake, where you have Alexander Daddario in a white tank top, in a freezer, shivering, like Jessica Biel in the Chainsaw remake. And basically, I mean, yeah, her story goes through all the steps. She starts falling for the guy for the wrong side of the tracks. Family disagrees. They have a falling out. She runs away. Then the boyfriend and the family want to know where she is. Which one thing she does is that she runs. She runs every day. She's gonna be does track. and she runs by the slaughterhouse every day. And a couple times sees Martin up in the window. And with the pacing, it can be a little slow, mostly on her side, like with her story. Like, it's over an hour before Allison actually goes to the slaughterhouse, walks around, and finds Martin. And there's the book from the end of the previous film with the newspaper clipping and the diary note of bringing a boy home. That's how she knows his name is Martin. But of course, he catches her. Sutter catches her, puts her in the freezer. Well, first he ties her up, Chainsaw Massacre style. And then, people come looking for her. He starts killing people outside of his typical profile, which is young, beautiful women that he's been doing for 5 years in front of Martin. And that's basically the movie. I mean, and I really do think they could have done away with the typical Hollywood story of a slasher film, which would have been her story. It's not to say that their characters were bad or not needed, but I do think an actual character study of these two would have been more effective. And even that idea in this cover reminds me of the film Headless, which is a spin-off, a film within the film from the 2012 movie Found, which is a very good movie. And I've been wanting to see Headless for quite a while, but I can't really find it anywhere. I would love to see Headless. And really show Martin going from this frightened kid to a kid that's still frightened, but he's been going through this for 5 years. He's now mute. It really seems like the turning point is when Allison breaks free of the freezer and tries to help Martin escape. Because finally, Sutter just takes a knife and just stabs it through Martin's hand on the table to keep him from leaving, while he goes and pretty much kills almost the rest of Allison's family. She takes a knife out and she has to carry him. And as they're leaving the property, he starts to kick all panicky because he sees the scarecrow with the bull skull. And she's like, "Is this what you're afraid of?" And she just knocks it down, shows him that it's nothing. And the look on his face is shock. I'm guessing that's the turning point where it's almost like everything Sutter's taught him and just everything else just crashed, and that's where he finally snapped. But the real turn of events is that she gets to her house, she confronts Sutter, stabs him, makes sure her young cousin is safe. Sutter's already set her house on fire. And she goes to look for Martin and to make sure Sutter's dead, but he's already left. She opens the closet that he's hiding in and he stabs her. And very similar to the opening of the original Halloween, we see this young kid who's 11 instead of 6 just stabbing her 20 times. Almost shot similar, well, not really, because Halloween was in POV, but kills her, and then even goes upstairs and kills her young cousin, who's around his age. We don't see it, but we hear her scream. And then goes back to the slaughterhouse and kills Sutter, as it was said in the diary entries at the end of the last film. Kills him with an axe, which is probably the bloodiest kill. I mean, he really hacks him up. And then we just see him constructing this new skeletal shrine with the bull skull on it, and then looking out the window. There is a post-credit scene where it shows Martin as an adult chasing down a female victim. But I do agree with Bloodbath and Beyond's the video on this, where they thought either they thought it was going to go this route, or that it would have been better if uh, the character of Allison was some sort of trigger for Martin about his humanity and his home from before, because she kind of looks like his mother. But then again, that could just be incidental or coincidental. But, like, throughout most of the first act, they have, like, this one female victim that he abducted from somewhere, and she's tied up for days. There's another woman in the, I keep forgetting the word for it. Not a stall, but, you know, I can't remember the word for it. There's another girl in the next one over, and this was kind of an effective scene. It creates the horror for the character as well, where we hear them stabbing the next girl, while the one they just abducted, you know, we focus on her and her horror. But she tries to communicate with Martin, whether he's standing there in front of her or while he's, you know, over where the other murder was, cleaning. She's trying to communicate with him. You know, it felt like that was gonna lead somewhere, but it doesn't. Eventually, they just kill her. And I really do think this film could have benefited more had it focused more so on these two. It really showed more of a gradual, a gradual descent for Martin, of him just completely snapping or succumbing or being completely, his gradual desensitization, I guess, because we do kind of see that, but I still find him becoming the serial killer to be kind of not really out of nowhere, but kind of abrupt. And maybe if we got Stephen Mita's 3-hour cut, there would be more. Story-wise, I don't know what was cut, but I do know that there was more gorier scenes that were cut. The only parts I remember of the score was there is a scene where Sutter is yelling at his main shrine with the bull skull. And it is this kind of slow, ominous piece of music that does kind of sound like the theme to The Shining. And then in like the third act, when a character gets killed or something happens, there is like this dun 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 dun, which is kind of like the third act sort of jump scare sting from The Shining, like the da 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 da, which, but a lot deeper or lower, which even that kind of sounds like the Psycho theme. But yeah, it made me focus less on the family drama of Allison and her family, and more on these two and how he becomes a serial killer. Again, I'm not always the biggest fan of origin stories, but if you're going to do one, especially when a serial killer character like Sutter is that well done and that well acted, then yeah, go for it. Also, the scene I mentioned earlier that's really depressing is the boyfriend character does get killed in front of Allison. And at the very end, it shows the boyfriend's dad. He's in his wheelchair. He excitedly goes to his son's room to wake him up, but he's not there. His bed's still made. And we see he has a box full of empty beer bottles. So then he wheels himself over to the front door, and he sits there with the box in his lap, all excited. camera kind of pulls back and he waits, then he takes the box, sets it down, and just kind of sits there. Like he's all excited to tell his son, I'm finally quitting drinking. But now he's not going to be able to because his son was murdered. that was kind of powerful. That was actually pretty depressing. So it's not a bad movie. I would say I like the first film more. This one doesn't quite have the atmosphere or the tension, but I still think the serial killer, characters and aspects were well done. The set pieces were very well done and very effective. uh, I just do think that the family drama part of it did get in the way of the intent of making this epic horror film character study that will eventually lead to the first film. But other than that, it's still far and away miles and miles better than an origin or prequel like Chainsaw at the Beginning or Wrong Turn 4 or something of that kind. So I'm not sure when I will get the third film, but I do plan on picking it up eventually. I'm not sure what else I'll be doing next. I do have a couple other Renaissance slashers to get to, but until then, thank you for watching.